processes needed to work and provide all of those things if we end up going that direction. And it will be scaled up comparatively to how it was during that pilot. Amy Loader has done a magnificent job of trying to build resources that are meaningful and understandable, because all of that didn't exist when we started this whole process, because a lot of it was passed on from the previous time we attempted it. And it was just kind of all run on. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the direction sheets that I sent, I created one for the evaluatees and one for the evaluators. And so after people would call, like the video piece, Angelique, I have a note that if we go this route, there will be a note in there where it tells you how to upload artifacts to say, if you're uploading a photo or a video, please insert that link into a Word document and then upload. Those are some of the learning curves that we needed to work through. And then there were a couple other things that I think could be clarified in those direction sheets that were created. Like Mr. Scheck said, I took what the state had and tried to compile it because, in my opinion, some of their directions were a little vague. And there were like 3 different sheets that you had to work through from both ends. So I tried to combine those. But I did receive feedback from people. If they would call with a question, I'd go look at the directions and go, okay, need to clarify that more. Or there were a couple times I had multiple steps in there and they were like, oh, it didn't ask me to do that. So those are things that we would definitely clean up if this is the direction that we go. We had a training for admin on both of those sets of directions. And if we go full scale, obviously the rollout would be different than it was for this year.
With that rollout, if it does go that route, typically, well, as was already said, with like the E4E and with the trial, it was different from building to building. Has anything been discussed internally about how that would look to make sure that it's uniform across the district and not this building is doing X, Y, and Z while that building is doing A, B, and C?
Yes, and that's something that has been discussed at the district level for this past year with all aspects of evaluations, whether it's certified, classified, administrative, is creating some consistency with how we work through those processes. We're actually...
I'm certain that's a problem even currently with the E4E, correct?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why we, I mean, and I think I said this, when I was an administrator in Oklahoma, every year we had to go through a calibration training and make sure that we were seeing things the same way everybody else was seeing them and making sure we were operating in a certain manner consistent across the board. That I've never seen that since I've been here, and that's something that from the HR perspective that we have discussed and brought up, and we actually started a process this year with our administrators during principal PLC time to start working through some of that calibration process, and we will continue to build on that as we move into next year and the year after, just to make sure that no matter what tool it is, there's some consistency and we're seeing things, so to speak, the same way. Some of that deals with, like, we watch a clip of a classroom teacher doing things in the classroom and then have genuine, authentic discussion about how would we have rated that, what did you do, and just kind of have those conversations like that and kind of have that calibration. It's things that occurred when I was in the building. It always occurred with the walkthrough tool that we had that was not part of the evaluation process, but never really happened with the actual evaluation tool. So,
I might also add that as part of the educator support program, so that would be for all new teachers or teachers who are new to the district, we did take time during their sessions to talk about the rubrics and what would expectations look like, so that those newer teachers had an idea of what those rubrics were looking for. And we would continue to do that as well next year, no matter which direction we go, because it's very important for those new teachers to not just be handed those rubrics, but to have an idea of what that means, what those things mean in each one of those components. So.
And then if it does move over to the E4E, and anytime there's change, or sorry, move from the E4E to the KEEP, anytime there's change, there's growing pains. And the growing pains on that typically will take extra time. It sounds like from the administrative point of view, it's going to take less time for them, but that burden's going to be shifted to the teachers because they're the ones having to upload all of that data. In doing that, is there any kind of a conversation as far as something that would be taken off their plate commensurate in time? Is there some discussion about a stipend, or for those people that are on evaluation cycle year, or even the possibility of doing it during the normal contract date?
Right. I mean, we'll take it under consideration, I guess. Well, since you're going to take time to think about it anyway, I guess we'll take the same time and have a conversation about a response to that. I have several different, I've thought about that, and knowing that that's been the major concern with this the whole time. I also think that kind of goes back to every single individual person and their ability to read the directions and follow the directions. And I literally, I think it could be anywhere from no extra time to a bunch of extra time. So that's hard to put in some sort of commensurate amount, so to speak. And so, but it is still something that we will take into consideration.
I do have the question about the number of artifacts. So if you are talking across the district to calibrate so that everyone has the same expectations, everyone from every building is going to have that same expectation about number of goals and number of artifacts.
That was, sorry, go ahead.
Because we have teachers on our side who have done this in other districts, which is part of our reservation, you know, and that they were expected to have a lot, an overabundance of artifacts, and otherwise they would get dinged. So I think that is a concern mark.
Yeah. And it actually, in the directions that were sent to the evaluatees and the evaluators, it outlines 1 to 2 goals, 1 to 2 artifacts. So I mean, it's.
And we would not change that expectation.
Yeah.
Again, the whole point of the evaluation is growth.
Right.
And so as long as that's the focus, it doesn't need to have, in fact, the more you get, probably the more watered down it becomes, because how can you focus on all of those things at once?
As far as the goals, how are the goals set in the new system?
I believe they're just placed in there, but most of them come directly out of the frontline goals or are tied to the frontline goals that are set by the teachers already for their IDPD.
Yes, okay, so as
That was
part
what
of
I
the
was trying to-
PDC, we review those every year, and the teachers make them
Yeah.
with their
So they're
administrator.
Literally just transferred into there for the evaluation process when they come up for cycle, because those are reviewed every year anyway.
Yeah, and you can align those goals with
I do.
which one of the 4 components that they would fall under is how it would happen, because in KEEP, you attach your goal to a component, one of the 4 components. And so, you know, depending on whatever that goal is, they would just put it under the component that it matches.
So for example, my goal, which has been for the past couple of years, is to implement documents and techniques that I've learned through the James Madison Fellowship into my civics parts of my classroom to enhance the Constitution. That would have,
I'm sure under the because it would probably come under instructional knowledge and strategy, so it would probably be under the knowledge component or that instruction and learning. Sorry, the components have a little bit different wording
Right.
for you to keep, but they're still the same. So either under the knowledge or that instructional component, it would match it.
One thing, I'm sorry to jump in, is it okay?
No.
what I shared with the coaches is no different. If you're a teacher, or artifact, determine whether that student. I told them that the coach, it's your growth in the process. My job is to be a guide, a facilitator, and a supporter. Artifacts aren't something I want you just to put in there. They should be what you put in there to measure your growth. It's not my artifact, it's your artifact. No different than what you ask of your students. So I get where we're going, and I think the number, whatever it takes for you as evaluate team to say, yeah, I made growth on my goal, and here's how I know it. That's just something that I tried to equate it with the coaches so they understood the context of what we do with students.
Is there, and I don't know if you already have this in place, is there guidance on what constitutes an appropriate artifact for that?
I can just tell you what I told them is whatever it is, it needs to be tied to your goal. How are you going to show to me that this isn't show and tell? You're driving this. You need to use those artifacts to say, yeah, I hit it, or no, I didn't. It's okay if you didn't hit it, but what is it telling you? That artifact is a data point that they're using to show in their journey. Because my job is to help them grow. Artifacts aren't, I got you. It's you need to put in there something authentic to you. So that's just what I told them. It seemed to work.
I was just trying to pull the document up real quick. I want to say in parentheses, it had examples, but those aren't requirements, like lesson plans or data if they were creating some pacing guides or, whatever that might be. It had a few examples in there. I'm just going to pull it up and look at it just real quick.
So if I was doing your evaluation and you were going to include that from your work, I would say, okay, you pick which ones you want. You upload a lesson plan, whatever, and then we would sit down and talk about how did it go? How did
Okay,
we
so my immediate thought was a good example from your perspective would be I was using a Library of Congress technique of looking at primary sources, and we were looking at Japanese internment camp. And so I could take pictures of the students' use of that tool, right? And show just how much they learned and then have examples of what they wrote at the end.
I love the part, this is just me speaking from the academic side. You tied in a student performance outcome. And you said, here's how my learning, what I went through to further my professional development. And I want to incorporate that because it was rich strategies. I'm going to use that as an artifact if you tied it to a student outcome. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, but that would have been perfect.
Okay.
I agree. I was about ready to say the same thing. I was like, oh, that's a great example.
I think we might be up and running over here as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got the green bouncy bars.
Welcome, virtual world.
Right.
Okay, so we will put that one back on hold. Where do we want to go next for today?
We'll go ahead and let you guys start with some of your things since we did several of ours last time.
I think we did all of ours before we got to yours last time. I think the only things we have left are monetarily related, if I remember right, because we went down that list and went to the supplemental deal.
Because we did not get any information about,
Oh,
Calendar.
we can do the calendar, yeah.
oh no,
Calendar's another one we need to come back to.
That's the wrong thing.
this is my day, I'm so sorry.
This,
Get you.
the letter?
Yes, thank you.
I can provide a response on the President's Day holiday. After discussion on that, our current response would be that we would be willing to provide that as a holiday only if we were able to get rid of one of the current holidays that we have, and we are looking at the Monday after Easter as a potential swap for that day.
something you would pull your members on.
We would have to poll and see if people would be willing to swap that day for the other day.
Okay.
I kind of have a feeling I know what the answer would be. I would like to see.
Note and leave it right there.
Why am I as- Okay. And put today's date there. I'm trying to do 19 something. Okay. We didn't hear.
This is why. It says it would impact.
Yeah, but I think we want to see what they're proposing. We realize that what your hours and amount of work is going to be, including possible compensations and things like that. But like, we're trying to understand what you're envisioning on those two first items, your item under number 1A and B. And that's what we would like to have you speak upon this time, if that's
So we can definitely start with B, because it's a little bit more concise. And so I'll just start with that. So as I've been in the HR position for the last 4 years, there's been some things that, from my perspective, that I would assume were just part of being a contracted teacher and a salaried employee with a contract for the district. But for some reason, we have hybridized things to where we're going to pay a contracted salary, but then we pay an hourly wage for some of these things. And wanted to bring up the potential for things like back to school nights to be considered as part of being a contracted salaried teacher in the district, and not having to pay extra to get people to attend those things when we're putting them on for the students and the parents and the families and the engagement to bring us all back together and kick off school. Title I nights is another one that comes to mind as something that we pay extra currently, but it seems that it should be part of the expectation of being a salaried employee. And those are the things on that letter B that or the board is looking at from that perspective.
Okay, so the two of those things, one of those things does not affect the high school, like Title I. So I can guarantee we're going to get pushback, right? You're going to be required to do something, whereas I'm not going to be required to do something. So is there going to be something equally? Obviously we already work like music festival, but that's during the contract day and has been something we've been doing forever.
I don't have it in front of me. Give me a couple of minutes because
Okay.
we may be able to provide.
Title I. Some schools do them during the day, some schools do them in the evening. Because Ross does a lot of them during the day.
And I understand the argument with the salaried employee and the assumption that certain things should be part of the job, but currently those are not considered part of the salary pay. So what you would be essentially doing is asking for more And when I look at it, if I order a burger, the lettuce, the cheese, the tomato, the bacon are part of the burger. But if I go and ask for lettuce, cheese, tomato, and bacon to be added for my burger, I have to pay more because I'm asking for more. And it's an equivalent argument because what you're asking for is more than what you're currently asking for. And you're saying it should just be included. And I don't know that the working body is going to sign up for that, especially when the average teacher already works more hours in a year, in their 10-month year, than the average 9 to 5 does in their 50-week year. And they get less money commensurate to their education level. So that's going to be a hard sell.
And I wouldn't disagree. But again, as we look at the big picture, and again, if we have to continue to pay, it's going to affect something at some point. And as we've talked in this negotiation process for several years, the size of the pie is going to be the size of the pie at some point, and we'll all have to figure out how we want to slice that pie and give it out. And so as we look at big picture and coming to an agreement, we just wanted to bring some of those things to the attention to see if they could be considered. Because again, as I said, these have money impact. All I'm doing is sharing our proposal, because as we get ready to talk finance and money, some of that will depend on where that money has to be spent within this contract.
And that's completely fair. I would like you to understand that
I'm
going to throw your own words from last year back in your face now, where you said if you were going to expect something from us, you were going to expect something in return.
and again, we would.
Okay.
That's why I'm sharing a proposal right now,
And that's completely
and
fair.
completely understand that there will have to be some bargaining back and forth, more than likely.
Okay.
Did you have an answer about the high school? Or no?
Well,
You have to.
so we've had some discussion on, so to your point, like elementary open house is like 1 hour, back to school night is like 1 hour. We have kind of started thinking about what things at the high school graduation could be one of those things. Like if we said, hey, high school teachers, let's all go to graduation. That could be some. So we have had some internal discussion about how could we even that out across those levels if we wanted to go that route. But again, full well knowing that it's going to take some bargaining to get there, which is why it has some financial impact to it.
I mean, just making, because we have Title I and elementary teachers, we also help with music programs. And for me, I can't go home because I live out of town, so I'm staying and then helping with our music program at night. I mean, that's once a year, but
And high school also has orientations that don't exist in other places that occur in the evening sometimes and those types of things. So again, we could have a deeper level conversation about exactly what those things are if we get to that point where it becomes part of that bargaining chip, so to speak.
So what is your thought? I'm just trying to type it while I'm asking it, is like, does the Board of Education have any ideas of how many hours they would require for the whole school year, or like that would, how many events or that kind of thing? Because that plays into a lot of different parts of it too.
And it'll make it easier to sell to the teachers if they know that there's a finite number.
And no, there's not. At this point in time, there has been, again, we have had some discussion about what that could look like. But we haven't really said, let's go with 10 hours, so to speak, because until we figure out what all those different things are at the elementary, middle, and high school level that could create that equivalency, it's hard to put an actual hour limit on it. So.
What plans do you have in place at this time for people who are teachers the teachers, I mean, that have children of other ages? Because I know that this happens often for people Like, they have an elementary student and they have a high school student, and they need to go to both of those, but now they're required to go to the open house at the middle school level. Now you've just asked that teacher, maybe that single parent, to give up parenting their children because they're required to go. Do we have a plan for something on those lines?
So I don't know that right now it would change much as far as implementation. It's just that right now we pay, like we currently are having to pay for that time. I think the expectation of being there is still there, but we also use common sense. And if somebody has a child in another building and would like to go to that building for that open house, I'm not sure that a principal has ever said, no, you can't go because you're expected to be here. It's just more about the time and that time being considered part of the contract versus paying an hourly rate for that time on top of the contract. And so I don't think it changes anything as far as how it's currently operating versus now we're mandatorily telling you have to be there and you have to be in that building only, because that conversation will always occur with the building principal as to going to my child's event or my child's open house.
Well, I think right now, from what I understand across the district, it is some require them to be there and some are asking teachers to be there. So when your principal.
Probably has to do with if I ask them to be there and it's voluntary, then I might not have, I don't have to pay them.
Well, it depends
And
on,
so we have inconsistencies because of how it's being currently handled financially.
and that, it's not even, I'm not even talking about the pay. I mean, when you mandatory tell me I have to be there, then yeah, I'm gonna ask to be paid. If you ask me to be there and I choose to be there, that one for the open house, and I'm just talking open house in my eyes, not everybody else's eyes, because I don't have any kids at home, and that kind of changes the impact for people. So that's what I'm saying is, like, we have to look at that fact, because it's not everybody has to be there no matter what right now across the district. So I think if we add it, we're changing it too.
Gotcha. And again, that you asked for.
Right.
Yes,
what it
yes,
meant.
that's why I'm asking.
I'm just sharing what it means, and that's
why I think,
he was put in there for, is to create that discussion about what are those things that we need to consider if that becomes something that becomes part of the contract as opposed to extra pay. Anything from your perspective? I think. Okay.
do you have any other questions about possible? I mean, so you're thinking, I'm just trying to get some ideas. You're thinking open house, you're thinking possible graduation,
Title I.
Title I.
Parent engagement.
What, I don't, Jason, could you please clarify for me what parenting?
Let's do this. Let's take 10 minutes
Okay,
and we'll caucus, have a discussion, and then that way we might be able to even get to an hour's conversation, because like I said, we have some notes and we've had some discussion. But it's been a while since we've visited this topic. I wasn't planning on doing it tonight because it dealt with hours and amounts of work.
Mhm.
So it's financially related, but we might be able to get to a little deeper understanding of it here after we spend 10 minutes.
I think that's helpful for us to know
Yeah.
a lot of information. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I can have this, but I'm not sure.
I would just turn the mic.
Yes.
And they
We are unmuted again after our caucus. Thank you. Sorry, we had a quick break.
So I think one thing that would be helpful for me as kind of the new person at the table, I have looked through the negotiated agreement, but I've also learned in my time that things are not always titled the same way. So can somebody point me to directly what the duty day is?
Duty based student contact.
So page 30, or what I have is 30, I know, Article 9.
Yep.
Okay. Because I would argue that that's the instructional day, that's not the duty day. The duty day is not just student contact and employee contact. So if what we're relying on is the responsibilities of the teacher is only during the instructional day, I think that that is a misreading of the plain language of the agreement.
So you're saying that you view it as the duty day as the instructional day is a misreading of the plain language of the negotiated agreement? Is that your?
Right, that what is defined is the instructional day, and what is the instructional day is what we would consider student contact time.
Right.
That doesn't speak to the duty day, which is what the actual contracted time is that the teachers are required to work outside the instructional day. There is a contract day. The instructional day lives within the contract day, but that there is districts can require that teachers come in at, let's say the duty day or the instructional day starts at 8 o'clock. Teachers have to be there at 7:30. School gets out at 3, teachers have to stay till 3:30. That those are the times that are they're built into the contract outside the instructional day that are part of the contract and are part of what teachers are paid.
And those things, I have seen several contracts that those are built into the contract. I haven't been able to find that in this contract.
Exactly, but to say that
So
the
we
duty
can't
day,
imply it if it's not in there.
But to say that the instructional day is the duty day, you can't say that either, because it's not in there.
Short of any other language saying what the duty day is, that's the default, and that's been the accepted practice in this district for years. And any change in that is gonna be a change in accepted practice.
But I'm saying that the plain language of the agreement is that there is a defined instructional day. There is not a defined duty day. It does
And I'm
not say
not
that the
arguing that
duty
point.
day shall be the instructional day. It just says that the certified employee instructional day shall consist of 6 hours of 40 minutes of student contact time. So that to me reads that they shall be with their students plus their plan time for 6 hours and 40 minutes. You mentioned earlier that maybe they can do evaluation during the duty day. Well, there is no duty day. There's an instructional day, and there is time for them to be with students and for them to have their plan time. There is not other exceptions to that. So it cuts both ways. To me, the language is that that's what the instructional day is. It's not what the duty day is.
Have to look at that. Do you have a copy of that?
Of
Yes. Okay.
Let's see.
Because I'm not arguing your point that that's what Article 9 says and what the plain language of Article 9 says. But rather that we can't just make stuff up.
No, that's what we're here negotiating, that the instructional day is not the duty day. And so let's have a conversation about what the duty day looks like, which may include back to school nights, parent nights, Title I nights, orientations and those types of things. But this idea that we're paying teachers to go to IEP meetings is just, and saying that that's because of what the definition of the instructional day is incongruent with anything I've known or understood. So that's what we're here to do, is to negotiate that, and that's something we intend to do.
Okay, now that's a different conversation. If the point is to start that negotiation, that's different. I thought you were trying to imply that in the absence of the writing, that it already exists, that there's a longer duty day.
But what I'm saying is that there can't be an assumption that the instructional day is the duty day.
And that's been the accepted practice in this district.
And clear language trumps past practice.
So if that is where you would like to go with this, then do you have specifics?
I believe that some of the conversation, and again, this is coming from a place of, we believe that this is part of the primary contract. This is part of time that should be included in the primary contract. This is not a discussion that there should be more money attached to these types of activities. So with that, it would be approximately 8 hours. And again, this is not necessarily a set in stone, but this was kind of the rough discussion, which is 8 hours for elementary, an open house of 1 hour, back to school night, 1 hour, title night, 2 hours, faculty meetings, 4 1-hour sessions for at least 4 hours. So 1 each quarter for an hour, which is 8 hours. Middle school, open house, 1 hour, back to school night, 1 hour. 4 1-hour faculty meetings, again, 1 each quarter. Title night, 2 hours, so I'm assuming 2 title nights, or would that be 1 title night for 2 hours? Okay, so 2 title nights for 1 hour each, and then 6th grade orientation, which would be 9 hours. High school open house, 1 hour, graduation, 3 hours. Faculty meetings, again, the 4 hours, 1 each quarter, and freshman orientation, 1 hour for, again, a total of 9 hours.
Sorry.
Do you have that digitally or in writing so that we could look at it? It was a little too quick to
Sure.
take the notes on.
Tara, were you just copying it? I saw you highlight it. Can you paste it over into?
Yep.
The negotiations 2025 folder?
Sorry, I'm trying to. I don't, I have a question.
I did just drop it into the negotiations 2025 folder for you guys. It's required attendance at district events and coordination.
Do we have that yet?
Okay.
Thank you.
It's right here.
7.5. Here's. That's all that. That's what I'm saying. Pay for it, again, that should be considered. We're gonna say that it should be counted as.
On one.
I thought it was what you first said.
No.
Sorry.
No, that's
Clean it up
fine.
a little.
He was like,
What I do?
I was worried that I accidentally messed something up.
Oh, you're good.
That's what I'm saying, so there, it's a combination, but if you look at it in terms of, so there's true.
you guys. Sorry. We need to have a discussion. So now we're gonna ask for a caucus. Is the room last year, 2 years ago, we got to use that room over there?
Yeah, it should be
Just open for
down
us?
the hall, down there. I will walk down there just to make sure it's unlocked.
Okay.
Shared drive.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't realize that wasn't done.
And
I can write down my.
I'll email it to you.
She'll just email me and then I'll just do it.
Okay, perfect.
Thank
Just
you.
gonna send me the documents one by one, please.
I'm so sorry. I can actually do it real quick right now.
And my email address, my name's all littered in it, so I'll give you it written.
Okay, and then we'll put this on mute so you guys can talk whatever you need to. And, Sam, what's your last name?
Sweetly, I'm writing it down. for
Oh,
you.
okay. I don't know if it'll let me send it to an outside source,
Okay.
but we'll try.
I think it'll let you, but it's not very happy about it.
Yeah,
And my work email's on the front, my non-Gmail one is on the front, but I usually have better luck trying to get into this.
I was gonna say,
Shared drive.
it doesn't like non-Gmails, so. Okay, we'll try.
Make it hard, but I keep.
Okay.
Please email me that.
I have tried.
Thank you, I
Let's see
appreciate
if
it.
it works.
I appreciate that.
It says, yeah, it doesn't like it, I'm gonna try sharing. Do it anyways. Okay. Let me get this muted for you guys so you don't have this.
And that did go through, Angelica.
So, after our discussion, it seems like what you're looking to do, and feel free to correct me if I'm misinterpreting. You're wanting to negotiate for language to include what the duty day is in addition to the language that already exists over what the educational day is. Does that sound accurate?
I think we would certainly be open to that. I mean, if it's not something if that's not something that your team wants to do in conjunction, then we can just discuss those items we discussed about the additional 8, 9, and 9 hours.
But collectively, we are comfortable discussing the option of having a discussion about what the difference is in the duty day versus the educational day. But this body is not comfortable taking anything back to the members that is going to increase the amount of work they have to do that does not have equivalent compensation. So if you are interested in bargaining those hours in and that extra time in, we are happy to entertain that conversation, but it does have strings attached. And
Do we
We
want
will-
to table that then until we start talking money?
that's fair. With the, no, I think that's fine for now.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna table it.
Yes, that's gonna be the same.
What are they thinking about this part, additional minutes to the daily schedule? We'd like to know that.
And again, if we are going to be walking into this with our eyes open, what are you seeking in terms of adding instructional minutes to the daily schedule, increasing the number of instructional days, and adding additional professional awareness and collaboration time?
So it would basically now be an extension of that other conversation that we just tabled for the financial piece. Because anything that we propose at this point would now fit into that duty day.
I think we'd be interested in what you had in mind, though.
Right, we don't necessarily need to haggle over the numbers today.
No.
It's more of just informative of what are you interested in asking for?
So the basis of our proposal, and I think we can probably just put it in there in the other drive at this point. Terry, could you grab that one that says proposal 1? Put it in there so they can see.
This is the one that
What's that?
the one that says additional time proposal number 1.
I think so. That's the one
I think it,
Drag it over.
I believe so.
yeah, additional time, proposal number 1, it's on that
Okay,
potential
list.
topics under at-risk proposal 1. It's got a different type.
Just wanna make sure I was telling her.
Says I don't have permission to move files out of the
It might,
Might just have
I
to
didn't
copy
do
it,
it that
paste it
way,
into
so we had to
a
fix
file
this.
in that other doc, in that other drive.
Okay, technology.
Should be in there now.
Additional time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
This is good. Question for clarity, on the, at the high school level, the current pupil to teacher ratio, what would the intent of that and what could that potentially look like? It's under the potential budget offsets, block 3.
Oh, I just fixed this spacing.
So well, there's a couple of them that affect the high school. One is potentially looking at a traditional schedule versus a block schedule, to be able to include more time during the day for these other things. And then basically looking at all of the classes that are offered at the high school, and if we're utilizing our human capital for core courses versus elective courses, and if we need to potentially make a shift because we have teachers teaching small blocks or groups of students when we have potentially needs in other areas.
Okay. So in your estimation, do you think that would reduce or increase the likelihood of having some teachers, because it's a high need course where they have 25, 30 kids in a class, and a low needs course may have 4 or 5 kids in a class? Or are you thinking that the goal would be to level that out so it's equitable?
Yeah, so if looking at those ratios, determining if we potentially needed to not have an elective in order to have another core teacher to be able to level out those core classes, so to speak.
So how much time are you asking to add is what I'm not really following, I'm sorry. Cause I see add 30 minutes per day and then add 30 minutes per day. Is that like you're wanting to add a whole hour?
So if you go to the next thing down, it says this proposal is seeking 60 minutes.
And that would be at every level, correct?
Yes.
And on the cost estimates, and I know we're not bargaining, I'm just asking for clarity. The cost estimates and possible offsets in blocks 1, 2, and 3, it talks about the cost per 20 minutes and then per 60 minutes. That 4.5 million annual is the discussion for that. That would be an additional cost to the district to offset the payroll. And again, this is more your side as the new superintendent than this, but is it gonna increase the additional non-payroll costs to the district as well?
Well, that is,
Or is
that conversation has been had, and that's why this was developed the way it was. Because the intention is for part of it to be direct instruction, but the other part not to be.
So more like general supervision?
No, more like collaboration time built into the day and have it be, for example, one of the things that could come out of this, which I've heard for 4 years now on the elementary level plan time discussion. And if we were able to get some of this time built into the contract and duty day, now we can have a more meaningful discussion because we have more time built into the contract that we can distribute without losing instructional time with our students. And so those would be some of the things that we are looking at with this proposal.
That is helpful, but I think I misspoke when I asked the question.
You mean more like lights, air?
Exactly. So it does that 4.5 million include those additional costs, paraeducators, secretaries, your utility costs, or is that, the 4.5 for the faculty?
Well, I can't
Plus.
speak, again, I can't speak for what numbers Hammer put together right now, which
That's
is
fair.
why it's hard to have these conversations. He's not here, so I have no idea if that 4.5 is fixed costs and salary costs, or if it's just salary costs.
Okay, no, that's completely fair.
We can check on that.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what do you mean you don't know every little detail?
Just for clarification, so if there was a added time as you are planning here, you're thinking every day it would be collaboration?
Yeah, so there would be in some way, shape, or form as we would negotiate through this process. Our goal is to get that collaboration time built in every day.
And would that collaboration be administration-led, teacher-led, or some combination, or has that discussion happened
It's like, according to this, it's a combination, is what you're proposing?
That, yes,
yet?
that-
Also, yeah, because I.
It's down at the
Oh,
bottom from
that's
the
why we glossed over
bullet.
that.
Yeah, I didn't get that far. Do you anticipate if this goes through having any variance in professional development days? As far as being able to use some of that daily collaborative time as professional development and potentially change some of the professional development days that are built into the calendar to reflect as either a teacher work day or as a student contact day?
It wasn't in that, but we're at the negotiations table. That wasn't part of the original design.
So it was not part of it.
Okay.
And you were just asking about work days changing.
Well, potentially a work day, potentially a student contact day. Just whether or not those conversations have been had yet. Student contact day. No, student contact day.
High school. Okay. The high school narrative. 62 days. So there's already.
All right, so.
Has the discussion been about
Well, I think that needs to come up later.
my family is frantic?
So, before we discuss this, there's a lot to digest.
Mhm.
Do you have questions for clarity before we table? Because
My
I think
question
we are gonna need
is-
to table.
Yeah, we.
Because, I mean, obviously, that's gonna come up as a part of the other side of it, we just needed the clarity, but.
My questions have been,
I guess the question I would have is this intended to be a separate piece from like salary negotiations, or is this going to be like, you see what I'm saying? Like if we talk about this and we make changes or not, and then is that the raise we're talking about this year, or is it?
Like the
Salary
normal cost of
negotiation.
living
Yeah,
adjustments and so, and yeah, this is a conversation that's going on in a couple of other districts where they're trying to add days. And in the one in particular that I'm working with, they're holding firm to that. We're willing to discuss adding days, but we want, X amount of this percentage in cost of living increase. And then we can discuss adding the days, and those days are after that, and those days are paid separately from that. Is this the way that, and again, you may not know, because maybe a hammer question and I'm fine.
No, we've had the discussion and we aren't locked in one way or the other, to be honest with you right now. So
Okay.
but we have started the internal conversation, but until we start negotiating,
Sure.
it's,
I have one more question. Shut up, I promise. Well, I can't promise that. There's wording in it about at risk. So the money, the 4.5 million that's listed in this would be out of at-risk funds. And there's a bit about near the end that talks about adding it to the salary rather than like a one-off or a time limited sort of thing.
Yeah, because it kind of came about, so the proposal and the funds kind of came available through the fact that the state and how at-risk funds can be spent has changed over the last year. So, but from the district's perspective, what we want to be able to do is say, whether those funds are available or we have to find other funds to do this, we don't want this to become contingent upon at-risk funds. And so that's what you see down there in that bottom part. So this would not be contingent on whether those funds were available or not. If those funds were not available, then we would figure out what funds were going to be used to fund it, because it's that important to the district with the time piece has been a constant conversation for the 4 years that I have been in this position. And again, whether it's the plain language, whether it's not the plain language, trying to do what we need to be able to do to show growth in our students in 6 hours and 40 minutes a day is impossible. And so we've been trying to look at other ways to pay for time to get that collaboration, to get that extra instructional time. And this happened to be something that came about, and we are committed to trying to see if we can make it come to fruition.
Okay, this is one of the few times I'm happy to be involved, man, because I might get scalped for asking this. But has a conversation been had about, because this is roughly 23 and a half days worth of new labor. Has a conversation been had about extending the school year versus making the school day longer? And is that something that is even in open consideration?
I think anything at this point would be an open consideration from our perspective. And again, it's more about contiguous blocks of time that we can get learning happening, but also have our educators collaborating from the board's perspective.
I know Dr. Springston and I have had this conversation before. I'm that anomaly that the school year should be year round, but that's a different conversation.
Actually, I don't disagree with you.
Whether or not that's ratifiable.
Yeah.
And again, from our perspective, this is our proposal for the increase of that time. But if there are other ideas or proposals or counter proposals for how that could look differently, I believe we would be open to any of those things.
You were gonna not ask.
I know, but I had it pop into my head. I can't help it.
Okay, fine.
I tried to promise and then I retracted that. Anyway, the 7th period day in the high school. That, to me, that feels like a separate conversation from this. Because adding 60 minutes to the day doesn't fundamentally change, other than the time, it doesn't change like the workload. But I taught 2 years in Garden City, right? Garden City High School. And the first year I was there, we had a block schedule similar to what DCHS does, a little different, but 80-minute class period. Went to a 7-period day. My workload doubled. I went from like 70 or 80 kids a day to 180 kids. And what that does, it's just, what's that?
Less planning.
Yeah, and I had less plan time and double the workload. So if a 1-page paper, or it became 180 pages instead of 70 pages. You know what I mean? So I really feel like that's a separate conversation than this.
And I wouldn't disagree with that it's potentially a separate conversation, because we've had that same conversation internally. And obviously, if we're going to try to change a schedule at Dodge City High School, it's probably not happening this year as part of this contract. It's probably something that we put an MOU in place that says we are willing to take a look at other schedules, other options, and see if we can find something that would work and it comes back in upcoming years. There's absolutely no way we would probably be able to go from this day right now and say, oh, by the way, we're changing the schedule next year at Dodge City High School to 7 periods. Have fun. Like, it just can't happen with the timing of it. So yes, I would agree with that the basis of the proposal is the time, but these talking points you see down there that we have inserted is transparently letting you know that we also think there's some other things that we could consider in this process.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just,
That's kind of how I interpreted what
yeah, I just wanted to make that clear, like that wasn't part of a proposal package, but like just stuff you're kicking around.
Yes. Yeah, so those things you see as discussion items and talking points, as we were looking at putting it in there, I thought, should I just delete them? It's really things from our perspective that we are willing, but I was like, it doesn't hurt to leave them there so you can see what those things are that we're thinking or transparently considering in that process. And we're eventually gonna have to have those conversations anyway. So.
Okay.
Can I add something?
Yeah, absolutely, please do.
I think it's the high school, in the 7 years I've been here, when you think about it, all this, if you have a kid that's in high school, let's say freshman, with the block schedule, even though we moved to an every other day ELA component. Your own kids or any kid could come in fall semester, their freshman year, have ELA, and they could literally, potentially not have ELA until the spring semester of their sophomore year in block schedule. We know what research shows about extended time learning regressions. And for a lot of our kids who are already behind significantly from grade level and reading and math, those extended gaps on top of summer are creating even wider gaps and inability to close that or at least provide functioning levelizing skills. So it's not just the time component. It really has to do with, I think, finding some better ways to better serve our kids. And then, like Jason said, having the opportunity to sit down and really have an earnest discussion about what that looks like. We've kind of beat around the bush a little bit with it, but we've never really sat down and had conversations.
Well, and I certainly don't want to, I'm not one for shutting down discussion. That's not my aim here. What I think though is that there are different versions of block schedules that would alleviate some of what you're talking about. And I don't disagree that could happen, or it maybe is happening, but like I've attended Dodge City High School when it had a different block schedule, and I've taught in a different block schedule where every day or every class was an every other day class, like and they had 8 of them in a semester rather than 7-ish like we do now. So I mean, there are different, I think, approaches that doesn't necessarily have to be a 7th grade, and we can
Modified blocks out in the laws.
yeah. There's some weird ones too. Like liberals got a really wild one. I would not be in favor of that.
Did I hear you correctly that there's no requirement that somebody would have an ELA or a math in consecutive semesters?
No.
That was my face too, 7 years ago.
I have never heard of that.
Me either.
That's sometimes how it works out at the high school.
Okay.
And obviously, we all know that, I'm not saying, I'm preaching to the choir. From a kid's perspective, that's not good. That's not optimal for students.
And then I would also say that having gone through it and taught kids who were highly involved in, band and choir and theater and whatever, going from that block to that 7 period day, they were basically losing options, losing classes that they could take, and so they were just agonizing. Well, what thing do I love? Do I drop? And I don't want to put our kids through that. I'm not saying it has to be that way.
Well, that was going to be along the lines of my next question. At the middle school in Liberal, when I was teaching there, we went from a block schedule to a traditional bell-to-bell schedule, and with that, that's what we found. There was a reduction in the amount of electives that students were able to take, And the end result ended up being laying off a couple of electives teachers and replacing them with core teachers. Is, in your evaluation, is that a risk?
So again, those are discussion items. Those are things that we would love to get a group together outside of this and
Right.
say, what could this look like? What are the things we need to consider? We have had limited, just like Dr. Springston just mentioned, the can has been kicked around in the circle, but there has been no really, let's pick up this can and see what it's all about. That's what needs to take place before that can even be considered.
Well, and to that discussion piece, you had suggested that it would potentially start with an MOU with a desire to at least begin the process of the MOU as part of this bargain, or complete this bargain and then open an MOU to discuss that.
It just depends on what we decide between the two sides would be the most effective way to do it. I mean, in the last 3 years, most of the things that we wanted, just like the KEEP, just like 2 years ago, there was one that we put in there. Most of the time we have added it into the back as an MOU. So both sides knew like how it was going to flow and who was going to be responsible for what and when it was going to be started and that type of stuff. But if it can be done outside of the contract as well, I don't think the logistics of that matter much as long as we're willing to have the conversation.
I was just curious if you had.
No.
Okay.
I mean, again, they were literally discussion topics or discussion items, and I'm glad you're asking about them, because we would love to have those conversations. It just doesn't need to be part of this hour block of time. Again, at the high school this year, if we figured out that we were going to add an hour of time, we would have to figure out how does that fit into the current high school schedule.
So, team, any other questions before we move to table?
I don't have.
Okay, so if you're okay with it, we'd like to table and move on.
So since we have shared pretty much our main, what we had left for proposals, would you all also be willing to share your proposals on your things you have stated for compensation on here? So at least we know going into those conversations exactly what those things in 1 through 4 are asking for.
So we've always worked with a spreadsheet, and we have started gathering information and things like that. And I would like to say that we don't have concrete numbers about the financial proposal for just the basic pay at this time. But we do have some ideas about, and we haven't had a chance to really hash this over. This is just real, right now, very generic ideas about our regular supplemental pay, and maybe a few other places in supplemental pay that needs to be maybe looked at. So I'm gonna start with, for example, our pay for the chair and the department chair and team lead. And mainly this comes into like balance for work done at each level. At the high school level, if you are a department chair or a team, is there a team lead?
No, it's just department chairs or PLC facilitator.
Department chairs or PLC facilitators, you guys are running again, I'm sorry, I forgot how many meetings.
Like,
Like if you're the department chair, do you know? Because you're the PLC.
I'm PLC leader, so
Sorry.
we had 2 required meetings with like all of the facilitators and the building leaders. The rest of it, it was just between me and my department head making our decisions on setting our agendas.
I'm sorry. Jason, this is on page 21 under F. So I keep getting the department chairs and the PLC leaders confused. From what we understand though, at the elementary level, a department chair is not a part of it. But at the middle school, the team lead is actually tasked with completing team meetings. That means 4 days a week because PLC on one of them, or 3 days a week because of PD on one of them. They're tasked with those meetings. They're tasked with meeting at the BLT level, and they're looked to be moving into being tasked with more on top of that this next year, if I understand correct. And so our concern is that the pay for a middle school team lead is not according to the amount and hours of work that they are putting in right now. They would actually get more if they went and completed a class coverage than they do for all of the work for the team lead. And so we'd like to have that looked at and possibly increased. And I think it also bargains to say, is important to say that, we have these 3 teachers or less, 3 to 5 teachers, 6 to 9, and 10 to more. But a team lead has not just their core teachers that they deal with, which is between the 3 to 9, but they also are tasked with, like on our PLCs after school team times, to be with their extra advisory, because we have advisory, so that's how it's by team. So sometimes they end up with like 12 or 13, but they're not getting paid for all of that as well. Does that make sense? I know I kind of talked in a circle because my brain is not functioning well, and I'm sorry about that.
No, yeah, thank you.
Mhm. And then like I said, we have a rough proposal, and it's really rough right now because we have just kind of put it together and haven't had a chance to sit down and look at it, that we could possibly, I just want you to know it's real rough, share at this time.
Salary schedule.
Yes. No, not
Special
salary schedule, supplemental schedule.
Okay.
I mean, if you'd like, I can explain my thought process or the thought process we've had so far.
Let me pull it up so I can get it first, Johnny, okay?
Okay.
And then that way I can put it in our drive and you guys can see it in real time instead of just hearing it. Just gotta find my person.
I mean, I figure what we could do, and I guess this is kind of however you want to do it. I'm getting away. I can describe what we're thinking about the numbers and
Yes.
look at the numbers, or we can share with them and I can explain where I came up with numbers or whatever. Either way you want to do it, it's fine with me.
Since we haven't had a chance to hash out the numbers, we'd like to just share some ideas about what we're thinking. Is that okay?
No,
Okay, okay.
again, all I'm trying to do is the same thing you
Yeah.
asked
Get
of
some
me,
things
is
from-
just
yep,
kind of,
Yep,
as we get ready for those next big sessions, if we know what's coming, we can prepare accordingly and not have to possibly drag it out even further.
yes, no problem.
And understand that I'm not trying to hide anything. I just, when I put it together, I haven't had a chance to meet with our team about it, so I kind of want them to have a clear idea of like what I'm doing. But the concept is this: we overhauled supplemental pay, the whole supplemental pay schedule in 2021. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. It hasn't changed since then. There's been no adjustment to any of that pay because they were all just flat numbers. But I guess there were a couple of tweaks here and there that we either wanted to add something or felt like we didn't get something quite right. But like overall, there hasn't been any movement on that pay. And as I was looking at comparable districts Generally, that pay was starting to fall behind in a bunch of areas and still okay in some others, you know. So what I would like to do, and when I was playing with the numbers, I took the percentage of what that pay would have been compared to the base, right? As like a baseline percentage. Like, so if something was 10% of the base at that time, then proposed would be, or at least the base proposed would be 10% of whatever the base is. So adding that piece so that we don't have to like go through a whole overhaul of everything every time we want to change like those, they can just move with the base. So it'd be a cost of living adjustment as we go. And then also in an effort to increase retention, build in a longevity piece so that those percentages will go up for the individual as they are here longer. So a coach, for instance, that's been here for 5 or 6 years would be paid more than a coach in their first year. If that makes sense. So, I mean, it's exactly what we do with the salary schedule, just applying it to the supplemental. I say exactly, that's not true. Similar to how we do it with the salary schedule. And my initial thought was Garden City does it. Each year that percentage just, like if it was 10%, it would go up to like 10.5 or what, you know, each year, and then it caps out at a certain 8 or 9, I think. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. As far as like a proposal goes, I just haven't had a chance to show these guys the like chart that I put together. And that sort of thing.
In addition to his kind of number jumbling that he's doing, there was also the request that we were going to make was to put the extra teaching duty into the supplemental schedule. Whereas from what I'm told, that was a prior practice that somehow got lost, and they would like to return to that, where if, say, for example, I have a third block plan and you need a second art class during third block, then I would give up my plan time to teach that instead of having to do a timesheet and fill that out every day. Then that would be I would sign a supplemental duty contract for that, and you would treat me just like if I was on KISA team or a coach or anything else, and that would be placed on the salary schedule, the supplemental salary schedule.
That would be like what I talked about last year in that grievance process. That is how it was for a very long time, until you looked into the history of that. I mean, somewhere along the line it changed. But if they are signing a contract, then we have that understanding of you are expected to do these things. And I don't think it'll change anybody wanting to do it more or less, but it would be a bonus for those teachers to not have to fill out a timesheet. And sometimes those timesheets are not done correctly, so then they're sent back to those teachers, and it's just adding more to a day where they are voluntarily giving up their plan. I mean, they are being compensated, but they are still choosing to do that, so.
Because anytime that, we feel that anytime that you are contracted to teach on your plan time, which is what I feel like that is, then that's where we're thinking the contract is then there for them, and that gives them here's what you're gonna be paid, and it's a signed agreement just like our regular contracts.
And there is one other thing, and this is an observation. It's not noticed in the letter, full disclosure. It's an observation that I made. So for a conversation, feel free to ignore it. I noticed in yours, it does have special salary schedule. And what I see, and please feel free to, if you see other districts that you're working with through KESB that are the same, but I see a lot of them have it broken down where it's a supplemental salary and a stipend. And the stipends are predominantly for service done during the course of the duty day or for prior learning, prior work done. And the supplemental is with the expectation that you're going to do above and beyond your duty day moving forward. And it's a payment for extra services rendered. And I don't know if, and it doesn't have to be a part of this bargain, could be down the road, or if you're open to discussing it, the possibility of separating those two out at some point. I feel like it was worth at least mentioning, whether or not you feel it's worth discussing. That's entirely up to you. Like I said, it is not in the notes yet.
Thank you. Anything on, so number 2, kind of, I'm assuming it's tied to what we were just talking about, but I don't know that. It says the association proposes changes to compensation not included in the salary schedule.
That was the contract, changing our teacher class pay for teaching a class in the additional planning time
So
into
that
a
was
contract.
So that was that conversation.
Yeah, to move it from not in the salary schedule to being in the salary schedule.
Yeah.
Or
That
something.
I was assuming is what we just talked about, but I don't know that unless I ask.
No,
Yes.
you're exactly right.
So number 3, additional language regarding payment and supplemental contracts for taking on additional class during plan time or taking on educational student contact time before or after the normal school day.
Oh,
That-
that would include like 0 hour.
Yes.
So like we have people, like teachers who are teaching 0 hour waits, and they are
That's-
also.
That's directly tied to what we just talked. So 2 and 3
Are
are the
very,
same
yeah.
thing, basically.
Yeah.
Essentially.
but the 3 is intended to include that 0 hour, so that they are not having to do
Yeah.
the same.
But it also says during plan time,
Sorry.
so it
So-
just is an extension of number 2.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I think we already talked about number 4 last time, so that's.
It's not compensation.
So the changes in the language with regards to placement on the salary schedule, longevity and forfeiture of leave days.
That's not,
That's a different.
that's a different, so when a teacher leaves and returns within, say, 2 years, and, for example, if they leave and they, at the time, didn't donate their hours to the sick bank, and so they left leaving the district with 30+ days, let's just say 30 days. When they come back, what we are intending to propose, we don't have that proposal with us right now because that's with our leave, is that they get some of those days, if not back for that. Because
If they come back within a certain
certain,
time.
a lot of time, not like 10 years later, they come back and here they are, no. Because they forfeited the days and the district was basically able to recoup those days without having to pay those out, kind of thing. So we're looking at it as, using it as a recruiting tool for people who are in the area to be, that either give them back the days or maybe say, oh, you have so many days at your district, we'll give you this many days if you come and teach here, those kinds of ideas.
And the second part of that would be for your homegrown teachers. If you have a para-educator or a long-term sub or somebody that's doing a alternative licensure route that currently works for you, to be able to honor the time that they've put in. If, say, for example, they've served as a long-term sub in the district for 2 years, bring them in on step 2 instead of bringing them in on step 0.
In regards to the,
And I don't know if you already do that or not, but
No, we don't.
in regards to like getting, so the Snodgrasses left, are leaving, obviously. And one of the things is Garden is giving them, credit on their sick days. So they're getting extra leave days. They're not starting at the beginning again. So they're being given days to compensate that. So,
And that's
and
what,
that would be a good recruitment tool. I mean, we have people who leave.
You'll have a proposal.
Yes, we'll have a
as to
written
what
out.
That would look
I
like.
think Andrea, does Andrea? have
yes,
that?
it's part of our leave proposal with, along with our leave bank stuff. We do have some data and stuff on that, but it's just the idea of like, hey, we know that recruiting is sometimes difficult and retaining is difficult, and here's maybe a way we could try to recruit and, or retain, like.
Would it be appropriate to ask you a lawyer question?
Sure.
Okay, is it within the realm of possibility or even a good idea, bad idea to do like a reciprocal contract with neighboring districts and say that if we have an employee that goes to you, you honor their leave, but they come to us from them, that we will honor their leave? Is that a thing that's done or can be done?
It's not done. I don't know that it could be done. There were agreements between districts have to usually be a cooperative agreement in some way if there's something like that, which have to be approved through the State Department and those types of things. I don't know what benefit there would be to districts coming into some sort of an agreement like that, because to me, it sounds like, well, we can just trade our employees back and forth. And I don't know that there's a benefit to that. It wouldn't be something that, one, I haven't heard of it, but two, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, in regards to this proposal, I would say a couple of things stick out to me. One, this is essentially negotiating for two groups that are not part of the bargaining unit, which is teachers that aren't currently working for the district or employees that are transitioning into teaching that are not currently part of the bargaining unit. So that's a little different. I think two, being that if the district wants to provide a retention or incentive bonus to recruit someone in or to, incentivize the grow their own to stay, they're able to do that outside the bargaining unit or outside the agreement under the retention and incentive bonus statute. So this is a little strange to me because you're wanting to, essentially give days to people who chose to leave. And they chose to leave knowing that they were they were giving up sick days or leave days. So that's a hard one for me to kind of, but we're happy to look at the proposal, but it to me is an odd ask.
The intention is to help grow the district. Sure.
Right, and I think the district is able to do that now if they need to say, well, whatever you gave up, we'll pay you for that to come back. They have the ability to do that through the retention or incentive bonus statute. So, again, I haven't spoken to the team about it, and if there's language you'd like us to look at, but it's just, it always is confusing to me when we're bargaining for people who choose to leave the district.
And that does make sense. The goal is not to bargain for the people who chose to leave, it's to bargain for the people who choose to come back. And it's to encourage them to do so, to entice them to do so. And as far as like the grow your own, the paraeducators, I do get what you're saying as far as, while they're in that role, they're not a part of the bargaining unit, so they're not someone we bargain for. But the second they sign that contract, they are. And what we would like to potentially bargain is where they're placed at when they sign that contract.
Also, I'd like to add that there's, with having having positions not filled by teachers, those positions get filled by substitutes, become long-term substitutes, which means there are fewer substitutes available for the district, and it means that teachers are giving it more of their plan time. I think that it's a kind of roundabout way, admittedly, to get to it, but I think also incentivizing people who have left to come back increases the number of teachers that we have, which reduces the burden on teachers who are in the bargaining unit right now. So it is a bit roundabout, but I think it is in our interest to do that.
Well, we could, there's really nothing that would stop us from doing that, from my perspective. It's just, we basically take, so their years of experience, they get full credit
Yes.
for years of experience that are verifiable and transferable. So that already happens. It's just when they are not they have not been operating with certification during that time, that there's no certified years of experience to give because they don't exist.
Right. There are some districts who allow the board to place a teacher on the salary schedule, the initial contract, wherever the board deems to be comparable. So it does not base specifically on years of experience. So I was just asking, I don't think that's in the agreement currently, that the board gets to choose where to place.
I don't think it's in the agreement or it's in any precedent or our current practice is you get full credit for all certified years of service. And that's why it is where it is now.
Well, and just to
I
give some
think-
context,
It could be changed outside of this to something else and we would have no problem with that.
I was just trying to see what the language was.
well, just to give some context, the reason there isn't language that lets the board just place wherever there was, how we arrived to the original version of this salary schedule was that there was like weird inequities, like teachers with the same experience in education, teaching the same subject in the same hall, paid like $10,000 different from each other because of when they came into the district. So,
That salary schedule is still in Tara's office, by the way.
oh, is it?
It would fit on that wall.
Yeah, it was convoluted and messy, and we moved to this to try to create a greater equity, and so that's the only reason. And you're right, I suppose they could.
So are you of the mindset that you feel that would be a better discussion to have with the board because you feel that you have the authority to do that outside of negotiations? Or do you?
Again, I'm open to looking at again, that's why I appreciate you sharing the thought process behind it so we kind of know what's coming, but I would be interested to see what the expectation for that would be before before we give a response, I guess, is where I'm at.
I had a couple of questions on your previous proposals. So on the first one about the department chairs and the team leads, is it just an ask for an increase for the middle school team leaders because they seem to be doing more work? Or is it the same increase for both, or a increase for both but more for middle school?
I believe.
And I don't need numbers, I
believe that the middle school team leads are the ones that are tasked with more to do than other levels. And that I'm asking for us to look at first, what are they tasked with, how much comparatively? And then how can we either improve their pay without, and I don't want to harm any other group.
Right, but we're really looking at the middle school team leads right now and possibly needing an increase due to them doing more work
That's
for the same amount of money.
correct, because
Okay.
that's the level that has that most demand.
Gotcha. And then on the supplemental pay schedule, and again, I don't need details, but just some questions. So like the increase would be comparable to, either lengthen the district or lengthen the position. I guess the clarification is it how long they've been in the district or how long they have had that supplemental position?
So, the longevity that we're talking about in a supplemental is strictly about that supplemental.
That's.
So say I'm a soccer coach and I've been coaching at the middle school level and I move up to the high school level. I shouldn't start at a lower amount just because I moved levels. But I should also get credit if I've been doing coaching that sport in some manner in those two, either middle school or high school for the 8 years. Say Sarah comes in first year, never coached soccer, should not get paid exactly what I get paid because I have 8 years of experience over hers. And that's,
But if I go from soccer for 4 years and then I go to softball for my first year, I'm back first year
softball. Yeah.
Right, that's the intent.
And then also, what if I am from another district, I've coached soccer for 4 years, is that placed at the 4 years experience or is it years in the district?
The intent would be,
I would argue that the experience is experience, in that they would place it at 4 years, but that's also part of negotiation.
Sure, no, I didn't know if there was, it was more, it's just a clarification question, not a judgment.
Well, and I think it would be fair to say that if they taught like Pee Wee rec league soccer and now they're teaching or coaching high school soccer, I don't know that would.
Right, but head
take
football
those.
coach to head football coach, there could be a consideration of.
Right.
I guess from an HR perspective, it would, correct me if I'm wrong in this assumption, it would be easier to hire a new coach from a competing district if you could honor their years of coaching.
Like you said, I'm interested in seeing the proposals. Yes. Again, there are some things that even from this current perspective are sometimes frustrating because I was in Oklahoma for 12 years. It was it was free for all. Like you bargained for coaches, your supplementals were all basically individually negotiated. I mean, and you're right. Like it kind of hamstrings you sometimes when you want to have to try to do something to create that situation to entice somebody. Obviously, Garden City has chosen to do some of those things.
But I don't.
We might not be able to
think
do
that just
this,
is not
but
grass.
we can, that's what I'm saying, but we can do this. So those are all factors from the HR perspective that do make sense, which is why I'm interested in seeing the proposals before we give any type of response moving forward. Even if we decide not to negotiate it here because we have the authority to do it otherwise, I still want to see the proposals.
do we have any other questions for us on that?
No.
Those were just things that popped into my head as the discussion was happening.
So I want to say it so anybody who's listening or goes back and watches it, that the 15th, because of family obligations and often lots of almost the end of the year things, we've canceled that one. And then we are picking up a negotiation on the 28th of May, starting at 9:30 and tentatively going till like 3 or so in the afternoon, depending on how much time we find we need. Okay,
That's the plan.
okay. Is there anything else that we need before we end our meeting for today?
It's sorry, I was thinking the same thing like when you were talking, but is DCNEA buying lunch on that day?
I thought the board was. Oh, yeah, so it's a must-go. Sorry.
I was more thinking that if we need to pack and go ahead.
Pack a lunch.
Pack a
and-
lunch.
Or we
I
can just
think
take,
Pack ahead
or we
before
can just take
a
lunch
break.
break.
Yeah, I think we can discuss that. How about I discuss it with my team and then you discuss it with yours, and maybe we come up with something that works for both.
Last year, I know we did one and y'all did one. I'm sure we're gonna need more than one day
Yeah,
left after we get to discussing some of these proposals that are pretty large. So if you want, there's only 15 of us usually or so. I'll just decide. So the board will, what day is that again?
the 28th of May.
28th. The board will take care of it that day.
Okay,
And then we can discuss the next one if you all would be willing to when we have the next one, because we're gonna need more time. So.
Yes.
Do we still tentatively have the 2nd
of June?
of June?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
That would be the next one. Because,
That one wasn't a full day yet.
no, that was,
No,
that was
starting in the
after
afternoon.
noon, but you know,
Because all of the PD was
yes,
starting.
our Summer Institute stuff. Okay, if you want to look over my notes that I put in there today, and I just kind of, since we discussed briefly about the first item, the keep item, I put that as a check again. And then I don't know what happened to all my extras and where they went, but I will go back in and put in the other things that I had pasted in there earlier. I pushed a button. I'm not very technology today. So, we talked about keep. You're still gonna revisit that. We talked about the required attendance and your proposal, and we tabled that for now. I don't know why I put it under that one.
It does show.
Yeah,
that we agreed to.
that's not where it should be. I'm fixing that right now, because I did that, everything. See, it's really not,
And I just wanted to make sure.
yeah.
It's not her name.
It's really not my technology day. Apparently, I shouldn't touch technology. I'll fix the color of the topic too. You talked about, the hours and amount of work that you are, giving, proposing, and then the proposal, which I will also place in there. It went away. I don't know why. And then we talked about compensation for our supplementals, and then the contract conversations about our, pay for teaching during planning. And that was.
And 0 hour.
And 0 hour, thank you. And I think that was all that we had in there today.
And the leave.
Oh, and the leave, thank you. And I will fix. Go.
Is it bad form that I got up and stood and should?
No.
Are we,
Because my
Are we
ADHD was
good?
like really kicking in, and I'm like, I gotta get up.
No, no,
Mr. Dunlap, will you help me in this?
I actually appreciate it, because I don't set this much effort.
Uh-huh. Do I just?
I was
Yeah,
like,
just hit end.
if I don't get up, I'm